I want to get to Colin Liddell. It's been a week or two since we spoke last. What's been capturing your attention, Colin?
Well, I've been, interested in a number of things. Actually, too many things. It's kind of hard to kind of focus on one dominant trend. I guess British politics is going through a pretty interesting phase still, and there was a little bit of a kind of disappointment with the Peterborough by-election. Brexit Party was widely expected to win that, but they lost for a couple of reasons. I think one reason was the Conservative vote held up more than it should have. You're already beginning to see a kind of like a bit of a positive bounce because Theresa May's leaving, and there's an increased likelihood that Boris Johnson is going to be the next Prime Minister. So that seems to be rallying the Conservatives a little bit. And so in the case of Peterborough, that kind of split the sensible people's vote and allowed a scuzzy Labour MP to sort of win that election. And there's also been some sort of dubious kind of electoral procedures by the Labour Party because they had somebody who was convicted of election fraud on their team. And apparently in the town of Peterborough, Labour got about 10,000 votes, and the Brexit Party got 9,000 several hundred votes. So the margin was about 600 votes between the two parties. Peterborough's Muslim or Asian population, or South Asian population for our American listeners, their South Asian population is about 12%, mostly Muslim. And so it seems highly likely that that chunk of the population voted as a bloc for the Labour MP. And so Labour is increasingly dependent upon this ethnic and Muslim vote to get by.
And do you know what's going on is it the Matt Parrott versus Andrew Anglin feud? Do you know what the substance of that is?
Well, the substance of that is that there's always a feud going on in the kind of retarded elements of the alt-right. I mean, Andrew Anglin's been sort of changing his position for years now. You know, there's a lot of accusations that Matt Parrott's a Fed as well. But I've always found Matt Parrott to be a kind of sincere and intelligent commentator on most things, whereas Anglin's always struck me as extremely suspicious. So I'm more inclined to think that Matt Parrott's in the right here, and that Anglin is just playing his usual games of disrupting and kind of trollish behaviour. If you're, it's like Game of Thrones. If you're into it, and you know who all the characters are, it's probably quite interesting. But if you got better things to do with your time and you don't follow it, then you think, what's the point of getting involved? It doesn't really mean too much. It's not really going to change anything. It's not significant in any meaningful way. Same thing with the Katie McHugh's latest revelations. Katie McHugh's been coming out and accusing one of the people she was involved with of raping and drugging her, or should that be the other way around, drugging and raping her? I don't know.
Yeah. Let's get the order right.
Yeah. So again, it's if you're unfortunately familiar with the kind of trivia of the alt-right, maybe you can get some sort of satisfaction or interest out of following all of these little twists and turns in the kind of drama cycle. But for most people who are not really in the loop, it's going to be just like, so who cares? What's this rubbish? It's sort of spiraling into insignificance.
Did you have any thoughts on YouTube's latest crackdown and perhaps on the decisions by many people to try to make their living as a YouTuber and now they're demonetized?
Yeah, honestly, I mean, you should have seen that one coming, a lot of these people on the alt-right who were kind of doing all this kind of Nazi whispering or Nazi signaling for years and years, and they thought that they could build a career on it. I think they were pathetically naive. But the problem is that these people drag down other people as well. So you get people like Stefan Molyneux, who's always been very aware of where the lines are, and who's always kind of pushed quite sensible ideas, but with kind of nuance and sensitivity. People like that tend to get affected by these more kind of retarded people. it might actually be a good thing that that they're cracking down like that. If you look at where nationalism is doing well, it tends to be in Europe. In Europe, many years ago, they kind of criminalized this kind of overt Nazi-esque kind of behavior. Anything that which is very offensive to certain groups was actually literally criminalized, and so it was very difficult for people to sort of spread all these kind of Nazi memes, and which of course are done for the most part with a lot of irony, but which are often misunderstood by the mass of the population, and which then has this unfortunate result of toxifying and stigmatizing nationalist ideas. So it might actually be a good thing. It might help nationalists, European nationalists, identitarians in America to kind of filter out some of these destructive elements, and also to limit the influence of the kind of federal operatives in these more right-wing and nationalist movements.
And you also have an essay out on Mexico City has a Jewish mayor. Is this connected to some kind of sinister Jewish plot to erase sexual differences in school uniforms, Colin?
Yeah, I've just recently started to notice a few stories coming out of Mexico and Mexico City in particular. And as you probably know, Mexico is run by a left-wing party now, and this woman called Claudia Sheinbaum, who's a Jewish Mexican woman of Eastern European origins. She's become the mayor of Mexico City. And Mexico City seems to be getting the pause. They've unoutlawed prostitution, so they've now made prostitution legal, and they've also abolished the requirement for gender-specific school uniforms. And this mayor, she said that boys can wear skirts and girls can wear trousers if they want. And so you see that even Mexico City is sort of going down the route that a lot of these very liberal Western cities have gone down.
Kevin, anything you've heard in the last 10 minutes you'd like to comment on, Kevin?
The future success of nationalism, whether economic or political, has absolutely nothing to do with the alt-right, because the alt-right died at Charlottesville. I find Colin's suggestion that this crackdown on YouTube is somehow salutary to be ridiculous and typical.
Why is it ridiculous, Kevin?
How is it a good thing? There's the suggestion, there's the planted axiom in there that the people being demonetized, like you, Luke, are people, there's some sort of association with, Nazis, to put it bluntly.
Colin?
That's a misrepresentation of what I'm saying. What I'm saying is that figures like Andrew Anglin, who was one of the first people to be kicked off Twitter, helped set a precedent. And what they do, they always pick on certain kind of outlandish personalities who kind of like wedge cases. So we're kicking this person off because they spew hatred, and this person is related to certain nationalist ideas. Therefore, all nationalist ideas are evil. So it's sort of deplatforming by association. And so if those people find it very hard to exist, which I suspect they will now in the kind of social media climate that is being created, then it'll be easier for more sensible or subtle or nuanced nationalist types to make headway. And so you'll get a situation analogous to what's happening in Europe, where you see quite large nationalist parties doing quite well and actually having a major influence on political policy. Now, if that's a bad thing, then you must be mad or senile.
So you support YouTube's demonetization of this channel?
I'm not talking about this specific channel. I'm talking about the general climate. The general climate of social media in America has allowed all sorts of nutcases and fruitcakes to take over and dominate and brand American nationalist expressions.
You're obsessed with this thing that died years ago called the alt-right. It has no relevance whatsoever.
The alt-right is just part of a long process going back decades, which include various forms of white nationalism in the 1990s, neo-fascism going back to Rockwell and people like that. And all of that has gone nowhere because America has too much freedom of speech. So that means that the most absurd people seize the limelight and then are manipulated by these federal operatives to constantly toxify and stigmatize anything vaguely nationalistic. So it's a very, very, very simple thing that I'm trying to convey to you, Kevin. Like, just look at Europe. Europe, they actually criminalize all this kind of Nazi retard behavior. And in America, they don't. So in which of those two cases is nationalism doing better?
I see. This is the reason why nationalism is doing better in Europe, not for any, particular historical reasons or cultural reasons, but because
well, there might be lots of other reasons. I mean, I'm just trying to draw your attention. I'm just trying to draw your attention to one thing which might make sense to an intelligent person.
What's going on in Japan these days, Colin? What are there any areas of controversy?
Well, there's all sorts of trivial things going on, like some pop star was apologizing for taking marijuana. Probably that doesn't really happen quite so much in the West. The number of Japanese people being born is at an all-time low. The fertility rate has sort of ticked upwards slightly, but because of the lag effect, that means that the actual number of Japanese people being born is now lower than ever. So there's all these kind of various destructive pressures slowly working on this very kind of efficient and well-organized society that are eventually going to change it in quite radical ways, I think.
And what about fascism, Colin? Are you a fascist? Is fascism, if you're not a fascist, does the prospect of fascism fill you with horror? Because the traditional mainstream approach to dissident right politics is that we're all a bunch of fascists. So are you a fascist, Colin?
Well, it's an overused word, obviously, like Nazi and racist and bigot and hater. All of these are tremendously overused words. It does have a very specific meaning. I mean, fascism originally meant a kind of socialist Italian nationalism that was concerned with annexing Dalmatia. So that's basically how fascism got its start. The Italians were quite aggrieved at the result of the peace treaties of World War I. They were expecting to get a lot of land, especially in what later became Yugoslavia. And when they didn't get all those kind of spoils of war, there was a lot of dissatisfaction in Italy, which combined with other forms of dissatisfaction to create this interesting but very historically specific movement, which later was taken up as a kind of insult or pejorative for all sorts of things. I think in certain situations you do need to take a more authoritarian approach, but all of these things are conditional on the situation that you're dealing with. You might say that the modern world, given the direction it's headed in, could benefit from certain forms of authoritarian policy, but that's not really going to happen for a while yet. I think things have to get a lot worse before people are quite ready to give up all the comforts and freedoms of the modern West.
What is there to be learned, Colin, from the Katie McHugh story? It seems like a very sad story.
The thing you notice about the story is she seems to know lots of people. There's quite a lot of, there's a kind of tangled web of personal relationships and various forms of kind of group dynamics kick in. You have, people, friendships and relationships. And it sounds like she had a bit of a messy relationship with one of the inner circle of the alt-right. And that seems to have had a very adverse effect on her. And when you have this kind of group-centered behavior, people do things not because they think they're wise or good, but because other people around them are doing things or signaling in a certain way. And so women especially are very, very weak to that kind of social group dynamic. So I think she is, like she claims, a kind of victim, a kind of weak-willed woman who was carried along by these stronger personalities around her. But what sort of argument does that make for female empowerment? Not a very good one.
Colin, what are your thoughts on this phenomenon of people getting red-pilled and then losing the ability or even the interest to interact with normal people?
Is that a thing?
Yes, it's a thing.
Yeah, I mean, I guess you do get a lot of these little echo chambers growing up, and it is actually facilitated by social media. I mean, Facebook, Twitter, YouTube, they all feed into that, and this is one of the things they're now trying to stop themselves from helping along. I think once you get red-pilled, I mean, depending on how you interpret that term, because everybody interprets it differently, but once you get red-pilled, you go through a kind of conversion process where you think you've attained to some higher truth. Therefore, I think what should happen is you should become more evangelical. You should be, your main desire should be to sort of spread that message. But instead of doing that, what happens is that people cluster together with like-minded people in a kind of desperate attempt to take comfort from the modern world. And that seems to be basically a very unhealthy approach. So if you get red-pilled, you should become evangelical. You should go out there like the Christian missionaries of old and preach to the normie.
Colin, are there things to learn from the effectiveness of the left in getting people deplatformed, getting people demonetized, getting people doxxed, getting people fired, ruining people's lives, and steadily applying pressure where it is most effective? If someone doesn't bow to their pressure, they then pressure the person or the entity that has the power to force someone to bow to their pressure. Is there anything to be learned, Colin, from the left's effectiveness at wielding these weapons and the right's total fecklessness in wielding such weapons?
The effectiveness of the left, that just sounds like a very weird kind of statement, doesn't it, when you put those words together. Now, the left has been effective in deplatforming elements of the alt-right and the kind of Nazi-tard movement. I think they might be making a mistake there. We'll have to wait and see how that plays out.
Colin, do you have any thoughts on why the right has never been able to effectively deplatform people or get people fired or boycott people? How come the left is so effective, but the right seems so lacking even interest in applying tools such as boycott?
Well, I think the right did do a bit of that, but that was quite a long time ago in the 1950s when we had this Cold War situation. And due to the Cold War situation, the establishment had a vested interest in seeing elements of the left pushed down and deplatformed and put out of work and so on. The problem was that the Cold War ended, and then the establishment started to kind of change its tune, and it found a lot of synergy with elements of the left. And basically the establishment, which is the dominant money class, the investors, the people who run the economy, they have a vested interest in a lot of these left-wing agendas, especially kind of identity politics. They're obviously in favor of feminist ideas because it brings women into the workforce more. And after you bring women into the workforce, you have a drop-off in birth rates, and therefore you have to replace all the unborn babies with immigrants if you want to keep wages down and rents up. So I think a lot of it is driven by economic factors, and it's not really the left that's in charge. What's really driving this are economic factors, and the left is as much a kind of blind prisoner of this process as the people that they're working so hard to deplatform.